Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about how to write a summary and how to analyze details in your story. And all told, after you write your summary, you're going to focus on 4 different details in your story. 2 of one kind and 2 of another kind. Here's the requirements to meet standard. The summary you write would be clear to anyone, even if they haven't read the book you're writing about. Keep writing your summary in the same sort of voice you've been writing as you've written summaries so far, which is explaining to me the things that are happening in your story, assuming that I haven't read the story you're reading. You also need to pick 2 details that seem like they didn't matter at first when you read the text, but they ended up being important. And you're going to have to explain why those details ended up being important. The other kind of details you're going to pick are using text evidence blended with your words. You're going to identify 2 places in the text where the author describes something in an interesting, unique, or over-the-top sort of way. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. You're going to write an alternate way the author could have described that same thing. And then you're going to explain why you think the author chose to use that description and how it affects the way a reader understands the text. So start here and write your summary. Remember to make a list of events first and then turn that list into a paragraph below it. When you analyze details, analyzing those details is going to start like this. What you're going to do is you're going to go back and think about the text and think about a place in the text where there was a detail that at first seemed like it was unnecessary. It seemed like there would be no purpose to mention a detail like they mentioned. And then think about how that detail became important over the course of the text. Now, not every detail that seems unnecessary actually ends up being necessary. Some of them are just like unnecessary details. But there are a lot of times when we read that we get these details, but we tend to kind of ignore them at first because they seem like they don't really matter. But later on, as we read the text, we start to realize how important those details can become. So, using text evidence blended with your words, you're going to explain one detail that showed up in the text that seemed unnecessary at first. And then you need to write about why did that detail end up being important in the text. And you're going to do that same thing down here one more time. The next couple details you're going to pick are details about word choice. You're going to think about the way the author wrote the text and start to analyze why. Why did they write it that way? What was the intended effect on you as a reader or other readers, people who would read this story? Why would they describe something in a certain way? So, to start with, using text evidence blended with your words, you need to explain at least one part of the story where the author used interesting, unique, or an over-the-top sorts of way to describe something in the text. And that something could be a person, place, thing, action, event. And one way to think about it is, as you read, could they have described something in a more kind of plain sort of way? If they could have, this would be a good detail to focus in on. Focus in on that description that wasn't so plain, a description that was kind of interesting or different. And then what you're going to write down here is how else could the author have written that description? Odds are you're going to write out kind of a more plain description. And instead of a really interesting or unique way, what else could the author have written just to tell you the same information? And then you're going to start thinking about why did the author choose to use those words? Why do you think the author chose to use the words they did? How did it affect the way readers think or feel about the text? And you're going to do the same thing down here. All right, do it to it.